Episode 13, Difficult Woman. The car almost hit her. Natalie stared at it with a pale face. The front bumper was barely a fist's width from her knee. If the driver hadn't stopped in time, she would have been sent flying by the impact. "Are you crazy?" The driver got out of the car and walked over to her angrily. It wasn't that she didn't care about her life. She had simply rushed out in a moment of desperation, not caring about anything but stopping the car. She swallowed. She was still a little frightened, but she forced a smile and apologized. I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. She looked into the back of the car, but she couldn't see Bryce's face. So she turned back to the driver and said sincerely, "I want to talk to Bryce Clare." "You're looking for Mr. Clare." The driver frowned awkwardly. "Yes. Would you mind telling him?" Natalie looked at him pleadingly. The driver was in a difficult situation. He knew his boss's temperament and that he definitely wouldn't want to meet this woman. But when he thought of her reckless actions, his heart softened. "Wait a moment. Let me ask." Natalie immediately broke into a wide smile. Thank you. The driver glanced at her, then turned around and walked to the rear door. The window slowly lowered, revealing Bryce's extraordinarily handsome face. "What's going on?" There was a hint of displeasure in the deep voice. The driver respectfully lowered his head. "This lady says she wants to talk to you." Bryce's eyelid twitched. He looked at Natalie, who was standing in front of the car, with an indifferent gaze. He frowned slightly and lowered his head to look at his watch. A client was waiting to see him. It was too late to talk to her. "Tell her I'm busy." The window slowly rose. "Sorry, Mr. Clare is busy." The driver passed on Bryce's message and got back into the car. "Busy?" Natalie frowned. No, she had to talk to him. Who else could save her child? The sound of the car starting rang in her ears. Without thinking, she blocked it again, shouting to the man inside, "Mr. Clare, please give me 5 minutes. I'll leave right after, I promise." "Mr. Clare, what should we do?" Bryce frowned as he looked at the anxious woman. A hint of displeasure surfaced in his eyes. Oh, she was truly a difficult woman. Noticing that he was upset, the driver quickly said, "I'll send her away." But just as he was about to open the door, a low voice came from behind him. "Let her in." Bryce narrowed his eyes at Natalie. He wanted to see what she was really up to. The driver was stunned, but he quickly got out of the car to tell her. When Natalie heard his words, she looked up and, without meaning to, met Bryce's deep gaze. Her heart skipped a beat as she lowered her head and quickly got into the car. The moment she got in, she started talking. "Mr. Clare, I need your help. My dad has taken Liam and is hiding him from me. I need your help to get him back." Bryce raised his eyebrows. She really was rude, asking him to help her the moment she opened her mouth. He couldn't help but feel annoyed. He said with disdain, "Why should I?" He had only helped her before for the sake of the child. Did she really think he was being kind? She choked, not knowing how to answer. She knew her request was unreasonable, but she was also at her wit's end. That was why she had decided to ask for his help. If she'd had a choice, she wouldn't have asked him. But now only he could help her. Thinking of this, she clenched her fists and summoned the courage to plead, "Mr. Clare, I beg of you, please help me." She lowered her head, bit her lower lip, and gritted her teeth. "If you help me, I'll give you anything." "Anything?" Bryce glanced at her and smiled sarcastically. "What do you have that I could possibly want? Or do you mean?" He moved closer to her, causing her to shrink back in fear. His voice, full of contempt, whispered in her ear, "Will you sleep with me?" Instantly, Natalie's face turned red, and she bit harder on her lip without uttering a word. Bryce scoffed. He sat up straight and adjusted the cuffs of his shirt with his slender fingers. He said coldly, "Unfortunately for you, I have a lot of women. I can't even count how many, begging me to sleep with them every day." Natalie looked up, surprised. She knew he was very popular with women, but she was still surprised to hear the words from his own mouth. At that moment, she realized she had been in too much of a hurry to find him. Embarrassment welled up in her heart. Even if she wanted to repay him with her body, he still might not want it. And, as he had said himself, he wasn't short of women, so what was he missing? Natalie smiled bitterly to herself. She suddenly realized that asking him for help was the stupidest thing she had ever done in her life. She had come here to be humiliated. She took a deep breath and forced a smile. "I'm sorry, Mr. Clare. Sorry to bother you." With that, she hurriedly opened the car door and got out. She felt dizzy. The sun was shining down on her, and now that she was outside, she couldn't help but frown. Bryce turned, and his calm gaze landed on her. In the sunlight, her face was very pale, as white as a sheet. She looked especially frail and beautiful. Something flashed across his heart, but he ignored it, and instead looked away and ordered the driver to go. Natalie watched Bryce's car leave. Even though the sun was shining brightly, she could not suppress the chill that crept up slowly from the bottom of her heart. If he wasn't willing to help her, then who could she ask? She hugged her arms and stood there, blank. After a while of this blankness, she took a cab and went to her house. She had only just returned home. She didn't have any friends. She was on her own. There was no one who would help her. Her father was determined to use her and Liam to get a partnership with the Clare family. How could he call himself a good father? She felt both angry and resentful when she thought about this. But she narrowed her eyes and clenched her fists tightly. No matter what, she had to get Liam back. If something were to happen to him, she would never forgive them.